Hey, it's Brittany. Hey, your manifesting mentor. I'm not a coach, I'm not a guru, but I'm a woman who walks the walk and who's been sharing what works. And at this point, we are on chapter 13 of Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And if you've been following along with my series, you know I've been reading this book chapter by chapter and sharing live discussions with personal reflections and insights along the way, and we are almost on the final chapter. And I'm sad, but I'm happy because my intention for this series is playing out like I wanted it to. So, um, if you were able to tune into my last live covering the fourth and fifth parts of chapter 12, it was cut off at about 20 minutes long. And I'm debating if I want to go live again to at least discuss the second half, which was about 28 minutes long. So in total, the video should have been about 48 minutes and 53 seconds, something like that. But it got cut off in the middle of my live. And so I'm a little bit sad about that because it was really, really good. But I have a lot of notes from that. So I'm thinking I will go back and just record the second half so that anybody watching can get the full experience of what my reflections were for that chapter. In the meantime, in between time, we're going to jump right into chapter 13, Becoming Supernatural. This is one of my favorite, and I know I say this all the time in a lot of the videos, but this is one of the chapters, the concepts that Dr. Joe Dispenza is a part of in his community, and that's the collective part. The part where you don't just get personal transformations, but you actually contribute more to other people, not just through the coherence healings, but also peace gatherings. And Dr. Joe does a lot of this on his own, which we're going to read about. But some of the ones that Dr. Joe does is called Walk for the World. We're going to read about why these peace gatherings are so important and help make the world a better place to live. All right, so this opening section sets the stage for something deeply inspiring, as I said, how groups of people coming together in the coherent states of elevated emotion can measurably impact the collective field. Dr. Joe begins by walking us through the historical peace gathering projects, including those conducted by the Global Coherence Initiative and the Transcendental Meditation groups, where a large number of people meditating together had real effects. Lower crime rates, reduce violence, and more harmony in communities. And a lot of this was measurable. There were statistics, there were research projects that were done to gather this data. So the data behind these gatherings is hard to ignore, y'all. We understood that when we come together in peace conceptually, that love is the answer, but this is showing us that if you can understand the science behind what we're doing in our personal lives, you can understand the science behind how powerful we are when we come together consciously. So this isn't just something that makes you feel better. It can shape measurable outcomes in the world around us. And we need it now more than ever before. And if you're reading this in 2025, you know exactly what I mean. Here we go. Project Coherence, Making a Better World. We are living in a time of extremes. See, he starts the section off by saying that. We are living in a time of extremes, and these extremes are both a reflection of an old consciousness that can no longer survive and a future consciousness in which planet Earth herself and all of us on Earth are transforming. This old consciousness is driven by survival emotions like hatred, violence, prejudice, anger, fear, suffering, competition, and pain. Please tell me if you are reading this when I'm publishing this, which is the last day of June or June 29th, 2025, if any of this sounds familiar to you. He wrote this book a while ago. I don't know if it's been about 10 years, but he wrote it a while ago, and 2025 hit us with a bang. So I'm sorry I'm doubling down on that, but anyways, the illusion, or what he says is, so emotions that serve to seduce us into believing that we are separate from one another. So I'll read that section again. He says, This old consciousness is driven by the survival emotions like hatred, violence, prejudice, anger, fear, suffering, competition, and pain, which are all emotions that serve to seduce us into believing we are separate from one another. That's exactly how a lot of people are feeling right now. The illusion of separation taxes and divides individuals, communities, societies, countries, and Mother Nature herself. The mindlessness, carelessness, greed, and disrespect of human activity is threatening life as we know it. But by pure logic and reason, this type of consciousness cannot sustain itself much longer. Because everything is moving toward extreme polarities, undeniably, many of the current systems, whether political, economic, religious, cultural, educational, medical, or environmental, are being pulled apart as antiquated paradigms collapse. We can see this most prominently in journalism, where no one knows what to believe anymore. I got a raging toddler in my background. Sorry about that. Some of these changes reflect people's choices, while others reflect increasing levels of personal awareness. One thing is apparent, however. In this age of information, everything that is not in alignment with the evolution of this new consciousness is coming to the surface. If you aren't aware that there is an increase in frequency and energy occurring at this time, an increase in anxiety, tension, and passion, then you might not be paying attention to your own state of being and mankind's interconnectedness to this energy. In addition to the upheavals in our highly charged political, social, economic, and personal environments, many people also feel as if time is speeding up. I totally can co sign that. I felt that. I've said that. The pandemic really made me double down on that because I felt like for at least a good 3 or 4 years outside of the pandemic from 2020 to about 2023 till last year, honestly, it felt like life was like a black hole. Like a lot happened in that vacuum of time. And I always say I'm reclaiming my time. I'm reclaiming my years. So whatever age I was when I went into the pandemic, shave some years off of that. And that's where I'm at. Because yeah, time is speeding up, or that more momentous happenings are occurring in a shorter amount of time. Depending on your outlook, this could be either an exciting time of awakening or an anxiety inducing moment in history. Regardless, the old must fall away or break down so that something more functional can emerge in its place. So, for a lot of people who are feeling like this pull, this uncomfortableness, it's a lot of unknowns. It's a lot of things that we could fear because a lot of craziness is happening. He's saying that he says this all the time, even in your personal life, when things fall apart, that's because you're no longer in resonance with what's happening. And it has to fall apart in order for the better to come together. Yeah, in order for something better to emerge in its place. So, this is how people, species, consciousness, and even this planet itself evolves. This excitement in energy, both within humans and nature, begs several questions. Could greater influences be at play that are affecting mankind's correlation to violence, war, crime, and terrorism? And conversely, peace, unity, coherence, and love? And is there a reason why all of this is happening at this particular time? So now we're going to go into the section titled The History of Peace Gathering Projects. To date, the power of temporary peace gathering projects has been exhibited and thoroughly field tested in more than 50 demonstration projects and 23 peer reviewed scientific studies scrutinized by independent scholars around the world. The results have consistently demonstrated a positive effect in the immediate reduction of crime, warfare, and terrorism by an average of greater than 70%. Think about that for a moment. When a group of people come together with a specific intention or collective consciousness to change something or to produce an outcome, if they create it with the energy and emotions of peace, unity, or oneness without physically doing anything, that unified community can produce changes 70% of the time. To quantify the results of these studies, scientists use measurements called lead lag analysis. And I just want to say that I think that's why the civil rights movement was so powerful because it was spiritually rooted. Um, and everybody was just tired. My community of people, Black Americans, were just Black enslaved Africans, descendants, were just tired of the status quo. And we understood that violence wasn't going to be the end all be all. It was just going to end in a bloodbath for everybody. And I think because we had people who are conscious enough to lead in love and to lead in these higher frequencies of emotions of hope, and I know Dr. Joe says hope is for beggars, but who could lead in love, with the purest intention for everybody to benefit, right? Because where there's no equality for some, there's no equality for all. You can't have some people being treated fairly and others not. It's imbalanced. And so I think that's why the civil rights movement was so effective. I think that's why, even recently, people, when they come together and boycott, organizations or entities that aren't serving their community, they get somewhere when it's not rage or anger or just, madness leading the cause, but a pure intention for equal treatment, a pure intention for, harmony, and just like, hey, let's be fair here. And I think that's just where I'm going to note that and continue. The purpose of lead lag analysis is to uncover correlations between people and incidents. For example, if you looked at the lead lag analysis of a chain smoker, it would show that the more a person smokes, the greater chance they will have of developing lung cancer. In relation to peace gathering projects, these studies have found that the greater the number of meditations or peace gatherers, combined with the amount of time they meditate, the greater influence the gathering has upon decreasing incidents of crime and violence in society. A powerful example is the Lebanon Peace Project, which brought together a group of meditators in Jerusalem in August and September of 1983 to demonstrate the radiating influence of peace. And although the number of meditators fluctuated over time, it was often large enough to achieve a super radiance effect for both Israel and nearby Lebanon. This effect happens when a group of specifically trained meditators come together at the same time on a daily basis to create and radiate a positive effect on society. The results on the 2-month study showed that on days when there was high participation of meditators, a 76% reduction of war deaths occurred. Other effects included reduced crime and fires, decreased traffic accidents, less terrorism, and increases in economic growth. The results were then replicated in 7 consecutive experiments over a 2-year period during the peak of the Lebanon War. All of this was archived simply by combining people's intentions for peace and coherence with the elevated emotions of love and compassion. This clearly demonstrates that the more unified the consciousness of a group of people within a specific elevated energy is, the more it can change the consciousness and energy of others in a non-local way, meaning they don't have to be in the same place or vicinity. They can be in separate places, separate, vicinities. And he's going to, I don't know if we did this in the beginning of the chapters, but at some point he talks about how even it doesn't have to even be in the same time. Yeah. Anyways, in what's considered one of the top 3 peace gathering studies in the Western Hemisphere, a RAND Corporation think tank assembled a group of nearly 8,000 and sometimes more trained meditators to focus on world peace and coherence during 3 periods ranging from 8 to 11 days each, from 1983 to 1985. The results showed that during this time, worldwide terrorism was reduced by 72%. Can you imagine the results and positive effects, as well as the speed with which they would occur, if this type of meditation and mindfulness was a part of the education curriculum? Ugh. And still another study, this time in India from 1987 to 1990, 7,000 people gathered to focus on world peace. During a 3-year period, the world witnessed remarkable transformations toward world peace. The Cold War ended, the Berlin Wall came down, and Iran-Iraq war came to an end. South Africa began to move towards abolishing apartheid, and terrorist attacks subsided. What surprised everyone was the swiftness in which these global changes occurred. all in a relatively peaceful manner. So that was all in a similar time frame. And it was because all of these people, and I won't say just because, but the correlation is jarring. It's enough to pay attention. In 1993, from June to July 30th, approximately 2,500 meditators gathered in Washington, D.C., in a highly controlled experiment to focus on peace and coherent energy. For the first 5 months of the year, violent crime had been steadily on the rise, yet soon after the study began, a significant statistical reduction in violence, as measured by FBI uniform crime reports, crime and stress in Washington, D.C., began to occur. These results point to the fact that a relatively small group of people united in love and purpose can have a statistically significant effect on a diverse population. On September 11, 2001, due to the immediacy of a global media, human beings all over the planet felt horror, shock, fear, terror, and grief as planes crashed into New York City's World Trade Center, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. In an instant, the world's collective consciousness tuned into this event. Powerful emotional outpourings around the globe occurred as people bonded, formed communities, and took care of one another. During the unfolding of the events on 9/11, scientists at Princeton University's Global Consciousness Project were collecting data at the were collecting data via the internet from more than 40 devices around the world. As data poured into a central server in Princeton, New Jersey, the scientists witnessed dramatic changes in the patterns in their random event generator. Think of a random event generator as a computerized coin toss. Is measuring heads or tails or ones and zeros, so according to statistics, it should produce nearly 50-50 results. The dramatic changes in the patterns right after the event caused the scientists to determine that the collective emotional response of people's outpouring was enough that it could actually be measured in the Earth's magnetic field. What all of these studies ultimately point to is that there is significant evidence that group meditations of the right size with skilled meditators who change their emotions and energy can influence and create non local, measurable effects on peace and global coherence. If these peace gathering projects are a force for coherence throughout a society, are there anti ethical forces? No, I'm sorry. Are there antithetical forces that could be working against humans to produce incoherence? I love how he poses this as a question at the end of this section because he really just wants you to think for yourself and he's not insinuating that it is a fact, but it does make you wonder with the news media cycles, what is their actual agenda? We know that they understand the psychology of our awareness and they know that if it's shocking, I actually studied the news for most of my adult life, and I was an aspiring reporter turned sports reporter turned publicist by trade. And I know that if it bleeds, it leads, right? If it's shocking, if it captures your attention, just like Joe explained in the My Movie section, then that's what the media prioritizes. And unfortunately, capitalism has made the media outlets a beast because it means more advertising dollars that they get to bank on, especially from pharmaceutical companies and all the people that benefit from being put in front of your eyeballs so that you can make decisions to purchase their products or tell your doctor. Sound familiar? Anyways, yeah, just question it all. Question it all. In part two, we'll explore how the earth itself is affected by energetic rhythms through solar cycles and the Schumann resonance, and how this connects with our personal and collective coherence. So stay tuned. Don't forget the full playlist is available here on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, and linked in my TikTok and YouTube bios and everywhere that I am on social media, which is one other place, Instagram. Yeah. Anyways, see you in part two. Bye, guys.